I'm Dan Kendall, and welcome to the Good Growth Podcast. In this series, we'll be talking to a number of big hitters in the world of media, e-commerce, subscription, and marketing. Hello, and welcome to the Good Growth Podcast. I'm Dan Kendall. In this series, we'll be talking to the leaders in business in the world of retail, e-commerce, subscriptions, and marketing. I'm delighted that our first guest on the podcast is Darren Topp, CEO at L.K.Bennett and newly appointed non-executive director at Good Growth. Good morning, Darren.
Good morning, Dan.
So you've had quite the career in retail. Are you able just to give us a brief overview of your journey so far and up to the point now where you're now on the board at Good Growth?
Yeah, of course. So I started my career at 18 as a young management trainee at Marks & Spencer. And I then spent 22 years at M&S doing various jobs from store manager, regional manager, HR, ending up as the divisional executive. And then I decided to jump ship, and I was the retail director of BHS, then I was the commercial director there, I was the managing director of Outfit at Arcadia, then I was the CEO at BHS, and I think many of your listeners will know what happened to BHS. So I was the CEO who was in charge at the time. I then went to L.K.Bennett, sold L.K.Bennett back to Linda Bennett, and then most recently I've been working with the international Chinese franchise partner to buy back L.K.Bennett out of administration. Mm-hmm. I also chair Retail Executives, which is retail recruitment business, and as you quite rightly say, I'm in my first month as non-executive director here at Good Growth.
Well, it's great to have you on board.
Thank you, Dan.
So I'm going to just jump straight into the high street.
Okay.
And so you may have recently seen in Retail Week that the high street's had its worst ever June in retail sales. In your opinion, why do you think the high street is struggling, and how critical is its health at the moment?
Okay. So, well, listen, I think it's been struggling for a long time. This is not new news, and I've got no doubt we'll have worst Mays and Junes and Augusts and Septembers and whatever month to come, sadly. And this is, I think, but the bottom line, this is a structural change to the industry, and it's happened in lots of other industries, but it's our industrial revolution, for want of a better word. Mm-hmm. When they introduced railways, people stopped moving coal on canals and moved it on railways. Well, for good, bad, or indifferent, a large chunk of the retail expenditure is now done online, delivered online. And that's not everywhere and not with everyone. And a classic example of that, for example, would be, Primark don't sell anything online. No. And they're one of the most successful retailers in the UK, mm-hmm. and they're very, very good at it. Next, do most of their sales online, and they're very, very good at it. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all, but what we do know is that the dynamics of the financial dynamics of operating a store on the high street no longer work. Mm-hmm. And that is a combination of there is not sufficient sales to be generated out of most or many of the high street stores to offset the costs, mm-hmm. and to make a profit. And I think what will happen is that it will find its natural equilibrium. It's already doing that on rents. So you're seeing quite a significant reduction in rents. So that'll find its natural level. And rates need to be resolved. So the commercial rates that are paid by the stores are disproportionate to the commercial benefit of them in today's world. And I think if it wasn't for Brexit, I suspect it would have been sorted, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. Or certainly it would be on its way to being sorted. Because the truth is, lower the rents, lower the rates, and many more of those shops will become economical. Mm-hmm. And also, I think what we might see is a dynamic shift in our high street. So I think we might see more leisure activity in the high street, more F&B, we might see more residential, more independent shops. I think there will be more interesting and dynamic places.
That's interesting. That was going to be my next question, really, which is why, or it's not just the high street's fault. It's a certain element of there's a lack of footfall in high streets. What can be done to help retail shops in terms of maybe say nighttime economy or leisure to help bring that footfall back
in.
Yeah.
Well, I think the truth is that it's, we've seen that high street through a prism of retail only for the last 20, 30 years. And the reality is we've got our high streets were significantly more dynamic than just a homogeneous set of retailers. We need to, I think that will come back, but we need to change some of the commercial dynamics for that to happen. We need to change planning legislation. We need to change local authorities' view on what's acceptable in high streets. So I think they need to become more dynamic places both to live, eat, play and shop. And as I say, I think if we can get the commercials right, I think what we'll see is, we're a fantastic country of entrepreneurs. I think what we'll see is some very interesting and exciting shops develop. And if you go up and down some of those very sexy high streets in London, you see some amazing retailers. And even, I live in Lincolnshire, even in, if you go up and down Lincoln High Street, yes, it's got a mixture of some of the traditional high street stores, and it's got a chunk of shops that are closed, but also it's got some very, very beautiful, exciting and interesting independent shops. And I'd like to see our high streets, grow and thrive in that way and be more interesting and dynamic. But they're going to need some help and support. That's the truth, Dan.
And is there a real challenge around the disparities in wealth across the country? So, for example, you walk into Exeter High Street on any given day, and perhaps because of its geography, of it being a smaller city, it's always there's a high footfall, it's quite well populated. The high street seems to be, you wouldn't say it's in particularly poor health or anything. And similar with Bristol as well. You go into Bristol, you've got wonderful shopping centres and facilities. And is it a case of some particularly towns, but cities as well, being left behind?
I'm not sure it's that simple, if I'm honest. I think, I live in Lincolnshire, so the average salary in Lincolnshire is significantly lower than the average salary in London. But let me tell you, you can buy a house, you can buy a whole street in London, in Lincoln, for the price of a house in London. So it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, it's all about, it's not what you earn, it's what your disposable income is the truth for most people. So I think the playing field's a little bit more level than it looks, perhaps on paper. However, there is no doubt that the challenge for businesses and for politicians is how do we spread the wealth and the economy in a more effective way. That's for sure. So there's a real opportunity there to move away from just a London-centric economy, which I think we're seeing some examples of. I think the Northern Powerhouse work, etc., to try and bring that economic growth to the regions. And I think some of the new economies and the new technologies and the new industries will allow for that as well.
Okay. And where do you? So what is next? If you in terms of looking at tomorrow rather than perhaps 10 years down the line, what do you think is next for the high street? Where's the next? What's the next challenge and what's it?
I think in the short term, what we've got to do is we've got to get government, local authorities, and businesses focused on a recovery, and the government have got their high street turnaround plan, which I think there's some good things in that. I think there's some good stuff. But actually, I think what we can do, I think the government's got to sort business rates out and got to sort it out pretty quickly, in my view. It's got to come with a solution. I get the government's got to generate a similar or same amount of revenue, but we've got to look at a different way in which we can do that. Because I think reducing business rates, with rents coming down, just because the market's bringing them down, will in itself start to rejuvenate the high street. But it's got to be a desire and a want to do it. I mean, we are unique in some ways in the UK that we have got this high street world. You talk to people around the world in America and China, and there's you talk about the high street, and they're like, "What? What is that?" Yeah. So it is a sort of unique part of our heritage and our history, and it's going to require a pretty concerted effort. My concern, Dan, if I'm honest, is that it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
And and that's going to be very challenging for the people who work there.
And do you think there's that desire for people to kind of engage with that high street? We are again a nation of very kind of, we like our community, and particularly towns and cities. Like people probably. Do you think people want to be able to enjoy the high street and be a part?
I do. Yeah, 100%. I do. Yeah, I do. We're still creatures of wanting to meet in collective places. Think of the number of people that go for a cup of coffee, and then we still want to meet friends and family, and we want places in which to do that are not just our home. Mm-hmm. So I 100% believe that it's it's doable, B, it's desirable, and 3, there's a profit to be made out of it.
I just want to ask you finally just a couple of questions on Good Growth.
Yep.
And firstly asking, why did you choose to join Good Growth?
Well, I know James and Chris, the owners. I met them probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and they did a big piece of work for us when we were at BHS, and I was very impressed. I really liked Chris, really liked James. Very impressed with the principle of good growth. It does what it says on the tin. It's called Good Growth for a reason. And they were very focused on 2 things that I think are critical for any retailer. 1, the customer, and 2, the outcome. They were very, very outcome focused. And, James, I remember, being in the office saying, for every £1,000 you invest down, I'm going to give you £25,000 back. And you think, yeah, okay, whatever. But he did, that's how it worked. And I was... So I really got excited about the company, and I'm very interested in it, very interested in the individuals, met quite a number of people who work here. You're all very smart, intelligent guys. And when James and Chris spoke to me about it, I thought, well, actually, maybe I could offer something different.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you for your time, Darren. I much appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
It's been great to talk to you, and thanks again for your time. Pleasure to talk to you.
You're welcome.